Welcome to this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast, where we look forward to shaving every day. Welcome to episode 50 of this podcast. My name is Rick DeWeese. I'll be your host this week. This week, we've got some letters to go over. I have come to the conclusion that, well, I'm dangerous in public. I'll tell you all about it. I tried a soap. It was a handcrafted soap. One of our local soap makers that makes bath soaps. Tried a shaving soap. I'll tell you all about that. The other soap that I have been trying, I finally got around to trying some of the bubbles. I have, in fact, gotten a couple of jars of Catie's bubbles. I'll tell you what my impressions were of those. We also have the razor of the week, a Schick Injector, a Type J. And, well, I guess I'm back to the rant. So, let's get on with this show. So let's do some letters. The first one that I've got comes to me from Bruce. He says, "Hello, sir. After listening to one of your previous episodes, I decided to put my soap acquisition disorder in check and just enjoy what I have. Nonetheless, my collection is still quite large. This has left me with a worry that these soaps may go bad and expire before I had the chance to use them all. I have heard various opinions on this topic, and I have heard of some shavers using soaps that are 30 years old or older. Some say that the lather doesn't deteriorate, just the scents. I've also heard some people describe their soaps taking on what they think is mold and green spots. I was wondering if you may have some knowledge to share on this topic. Let me end with saying how much I love your podcast and how I appreciate what you do. Thank you, your fan and subscriber, Bruce." Well, first off, thank you very much for the letter, Bruce. Now, as to older soaps, just recently I used a Colgate soap that was, I'm thinking, about 25 years old. It wasn't the greatest soap in the world, but it lathered okay. It just, needed some help, and you're right, it didn't have any scent. For some of the modern soaps, I don't really have any knowledge. It's more of an opinion. My opinion is that the soaps that are in the plastic containers, or the metallic tins, will probably last for years, absolutely years, if you do a couple of things. Number one, let your soaps dry out before you put the cap back on them. If there's mold and stuff that's getting into these soaps, first off, it's because from misuse, but there's probably too much moisture in them. And then somebody caps them up and shoves them in a dark corner somewhere, and it's just, it becomes a potential breeding ground for mold. There's mold everywhere. There's mold spores all throughout the air, and with the houses that we have with the ceiling fans and all this other stuff, it's everywhere. So, there is that. But I was watching, I think it was the Traditional Shaving Evangelist, TSE, on YouTube, Chris over there, and he was mentioning that if you have a soap and if you're worried about age on them, to take them and dry them out before you put the cap on and store them. And I think that's good advice. If nothing else, it'll keep them from getting too awful, damp, if you will. They still act like soaps instead of just like, sludge. So, that's probably what I would do there. On a puck, the issue that you have is that, what are you going to put it in? If it's just out in the open, it has all sides exposed, and it just, the scents just kind of waft off this thing, and eventually, it will get down to the point where it doesn't really have much scent left. So that's always an issue, and it's really, I would think, prevalent, or should be prevalent, more prevalent, in the pucks that are in just the plain cardboard boxes. Cardboard containers, because there's really not a whole lot to stop the scents from migrating out of the soap into, the atmosphere. So, are you going to get to a point where your soaps, 25 years from now, 30 years from now, you're still going to have the same soap? I guess the only thing I would say is that if you still have a soap after 35 years, you didn't like it that much. But anyhow, Bruce, thank you very much for the letter. Now, the next one that I've got comes from Mark. And he says, first off, the title is Why I Returned to Traditional Wet Shaving. So Mark writes, I'm a professional and I have to have a good personal appearance every day. I had the handles to Gillette Fusion and Mach 4 and Gillette Sensor, but was out of blades. So one morning, I had to make an early run to the drugstore. But I knew my checking account was mighty slim and payday was a few days away. So I go to the section with blades, and this is what I see. And he's got some pictures of blades that are, very high priced and everything else. And anyhow, he continues. The blades were under lock and key and were placed in electrically monitored plastic cases like they were fine jewelry. A few replacement blades were selling for over $35. Well, I have to shave. I guess I'll have to buy some cheap disposables, I said to myself. Then I saw this. 3 disposable blades going for almost $7. When they deliver new blades to the store, do they need an armored car? Am I missing something? Should I order an alarm system and safe for my bathroom so I can keep my razors and blades secure? I left the store angry. I decided to go over to the dollar store and see what I could buy a bag of disposable blades for. That's when I saw something that shocked me. It was a package of 10 double-edged blades going for only $1. There must be some mistake. 10 blades for $1? Well, I plucked down the buck and bought the blades. Next, I was determined to find an old double-edged razor. When I came home, I went to the internet to find out where I could purchase one of these razors. As fate would have it, there was a beauty supply store next to where I work and had them in stock. I picked up this Dual model for $4.95. I had a shaving brush and some Williams soap that I kept around in case my can of goo ran out. I had watched a couple of videos on how to shave with a double edge, and then I started and never looked back. This cheap razor is still in my rotation. I've used it hundreds of times. The blades at the dollar store are Personas, which are made in Israel. They give me about a week's worth of great shaves. I do splurge on feathers and Astras once in a while, but these cheap ones work well for me. So, if you're in this hobby and you're kicking yourself for picking up that vintage Gillette for $10 when you really didn't need it, remember what you would be spending just to buy blades for your new Gillette. Then reward yourself with a good shave. Love the podcast. My wife and I may go to some flea markets in the fall. Hopefully, I can pick up my first vintage razors. I'll let you know what I come up with, Mark. And he attached some pictures, and I'll go ahead and put them on the blog so you can see what he's talking about. But absolutely, when you go to the store, it's absolutely outrageous, the prices of blades. And you think about it, a pack of double-edged blades for $1. I think I pick up my single-edged for, I don't know, it's like $2.99 or $3 or something like that. And there's 10 of them in there. Okay, so 10 blades, and there's a lot of steel in a single-edged blade, and there's a fairly good amount of steel in a double-edged blade. And you look at the cartridges, and there's just a minuscule amount of sharpened steel in those things, and the rest is plastic. And the only reason they're selling them so high is because they know that they kind of have us over a barrel, and like you said, we have to shave. Well, at least, if we want to look clean-shaven. And that's one of the reasons that people are starting to figure it out and go back to the double-edged blades at, $1 a pack. It's, to me, I'm sorry, but it's almost criminal what they're charging for these blades. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a free market kind of guy, so whatever the market will bear. But I'm here to tell you, they are all the way at the edge of what this market will bear. And I think the fact that people are starting to look at old double-edged vintage blades and even new double-edged razors, and single-edged razors and straight razors and things like that once again, proves that, yes, indeed, they are right on that edge. So anyhow, thank you very much for the letter, and let's get on to the next one. So the next letter comes from Barry, and he says, Rick, hey, I just wanted to drop you an email expressing how much I enjoy your podcast. I have recently started wet shaving, and wow, I have jumped headfirst into a new universe. When I was about 5 years old, my great-grandfather, who was born in the 1890s, passed away. I spent a lot of time with him up to that point, and he would tell me some amazing stories. When he passed, I was able to pick up a couple of his things to remember him by. Of course, being the 5-year-old I was, I asked for his razor. It's a small Gillette safety razor with a black handle. I have cherished it until this day, and now I'm using it. Thanks for helping me pull it out of the keepsake drawer and put it to use. On another note, I recently tried some Taylor of Old Bond Street sandalwood shave cream. Wow, could it get any better? I hope to find out. Some Razor Rock is on the way. Thanks again. Can't wait till Thursday. Respectfully, Barry. Well, Barry, thanks a lot for the letter. Great job on putting an old vintage razor to use. Your great-grandfather would be proud. He really would. Because, when you think about our older generations lived through the Depression. They lived through times when scarcity was something that people lived. And so to have a tool that was truly useful and still being maintained and used meant a great deal. At least for the folks that I have run into of that older age. Back when I was growing up, for example, my grandfather, he never threw anything out. He always kept it. If it was usable, he kept it and he used it. And he didn't buy a replacement because he needed a replacement. If, say, for example, a handle broke on something, he would get a new handle or he would make a new handle. He wouldn't buy a new thing. The thing was still fine. It was just the handle that was broken, and it was meant to be replaced. Now we've gotten to a point where handles on things, take, for example, axes and hammers and things like that, they're meant to be part of the unit and the whole thing is thrown away. What a waste. If they made a good hammer, for example, why would you throw away the hammer because the handle was broken? Put a new handle on it, and you're good to go. It's kind of like a razor. If you have an old vintage razor that doesn't have a handle, well, you can get a handle for it. If the head is still in good shape, you still have an extremely useful tool. All you have to do is put a new handle on it. So anyhow, it's one of those things. And yes, I have tried Taylor of Old Bond Street, and I believe it was sandalwood too. And yeah, it's good stuff, no doubt. However, I have run into some that are easily as good. So, it gets to a point where you kind of run into a situation of almost stair-stepping. It's one of those things where you think, wow, I'm here now. I've got this figured out. I know how to make a lather. I know how, I've got the technique down. It's as good as it's going to get. And then you go out and find something and it's better. And you just kind of stand there with your mouth hung open going, wow, what just happened? Anyhow, Barry, I greatly appreciate the letter, and hopefully you have a good experience with the Razor Rock that is on the way. So the next one that I have is from Ed. So Ed writes, Rick, love the podcast. Listen to all the episodes over the last 2 to 3 weeks. It's going to be a challenge for you to make 40 episodes every 2 to 3 weeks to match my listening rate. Yeah? Anyhow, Ed continues. I hear all of this business regarding lathering challenges, and I have to say it must be water quality for many people. With my Walgreens $9 Vanderhagen boar brush, I have lathered all soaps on the first try with no effort. Soaps such as Mitchell's Wool Fat, How to Grow a Mustache Synergy, Cella, Taylor of Old Bond Street, Razor Rock, Latoya, Art of Shaving, and others all lather fine. Easy to load and lather. Some take a few more swirls than others, but easy overall. Even with creams like Real Shaving Company, Art of Shaving, Trader Joe's Cream Shave, Nivea, and Taylor Bond Street also lather easily. I'm not doing anything special. I typically lather up after shaking the brush of its excess water to a point where it's creamy and add water slowly and not measured, but maybe a half teaspoon at a time. I have a town water supply, and it must be good quality because I've never had a hard lathering experience. Even the Mitchell's Wool Fat was easy for me, and I even got a great lather with the Trader Joe, which doesn't develop into a full lather, as I think it's more to be meant to be a creamy shaving lubricant, kind of like Cremo. I would say for me, the thing that matters most for lathering is water quality, water content, and taking enough time to whip it up. I find most soaps like quite a bit of water to hit the sweet spot, but some might be more picky. But I haven't found one that I've overwatered. Thanks for the podcast, Ed. Well, Ed, yeah, you've kind of hit on all the points. I've had people that were not using enough water, not loading with enough pressure on the brush. In other words, they just literally weren't getting enough product on the brush. I've ran into people that weren't swirling it enough to actually build a lather, or weren't swirling it hard enough to build a lather. And that's pretty much, as long as you're using decent soaps and creams, that's pretty much what I've run into. And it's interesting because I really haven't run into anyone that has severe water quality issues, which is just, one of those things that we like to point the finger at water quality, but I think there's other underlying symptoms out there. At least that's what I suspect, and, the other thing, of course, is that, they could be using soaps that, quite honestly, are, even though they're labeled shaving soaps, they're not. And, but all the products that you mentioned, they are true shaving soaps and shouldn't have a problem lathering. So, that's kind of my, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It's, if you're using the correct lathering techniques, and if you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing and putting enough water into things and, and swirling it around enough and, whipping it up and putting enough pressure on it, and you started out with a good load to begin with, I think you've hit all the basics. And after that, yeah, that's probably about the only thing that's left is water quality. So anyhow, that's my opinion on that. And Ed, I greatly appreciate the letter. Good times. I enjoy letters from everybody. It means a lot to me to get letters from you guys. I do enjoy the conversations, and there you go. So thank you very much. I have come to the conclusion I am dangerous in public. What do I mean by that? Well, it's kind of scary when I go out and about and interact with the general public, the public at large, because lo and behold, I can't really, stop from, evangelizing and talking about shaving and things like that. So the other day, I went to the mall. I needed some stuff, so I went to the mall. And as I was walking down the mall, kind of checking things out, looking at the stores, because I hadn't been there in a long time, lo and behold, I come to one of these little kiosks, the little stands that they have. They're not stores, they're stands that are out there, and they don't pay much for them, and they sell all kinds of knickknacks and stuff from them. Anyhow, I came up to this kiosk, and lo and behold, there was a guy that was selling soaps, and they look like handmade artisan types of soaps, and turned out his name was Tim, and I stood there and talked to him for a little bit, and he was a professor from one of the local colleges, and it was his wife's kiosk. He was just kind of holding the fort down for the day, and he unfortunately ran into me, and or I ran into him, but remember, he's out in public every day. I don't get out much. I'm the dangerous one. So anyhow, we got to talking, and lo and behold, he had a shave soap. Okay, so I was taking a look at this shave soap, and lo and behold, it was the same rectangular bar of soap, very similar to the Craftsman shaving soap that I reviewed not too long ago. Now, it was interesting because I had loaned the Craftsman shave soap, which is a cedar and eucalyptus soap, which is a lovely scent, just absolutely lovely. I loaned it to the sophomore shaver, and he came back and he said, "Love the soap, love the scent, but I'll never buy it." It's like, okay, why? Form factor. He said the form factor is just I don't like it. It makes a mess. You got to hold it in your hand. And that was exactly the same problem with this soap. The form factor of a regular bar of soap, it's you got to hold it in your hand or you got to dedicate a bowl to it. It's just it makes a mess. So anyhow, we got to talking, and I got to talking to him about the different form factors and everything with soaps. And that leads me off into another discussion. Just out of curiosity, is it too much to ask that people who make shaving soaps actually use them to shave? It's one of these things where I have the feeling that there are soap manufacturers out there and artisan makers who are trying to do a good job, but because they don't use the stuff the way it's meant to be used, they really don't. It's just, and you wonder how many people, wives or whatever, have gone, very similar to the letter the other day about electric razors. You walk into a situation like this with the idea, with the thought process that this is going to give you a lather better than the goo in a can. And then you get this stuff, and it's just, the form factor is wrong. It doesn't work right. Nobody sat there and kind of explained how to use it because, they don't know. It's just, they're just selling it because that's what's popular right now. And they really just don't understand at all. And so they can't be of any help to you. And these guys, they get this stuff and they think, okay, this is going to be the thing. This is going to be what gets me away from that nasty pressurized goo in a can. And then it falls short for one reason or another, either because the product's not right, or they don't know quite what they're doing with it, or for whatever reason, they got hard water, they use water that's too hot, they just, a whole slew of potential possibilities and reasons. And they just stand there looking at this stuff and this just disappointed, and they go back to their can of goo waiting for the next advertisement to tell them that they can get a shave as good as the foam in a can. Anyhow, that was just one of the things that I was thinking about. So anyhow, the guy's name was David, or I'm sorry, Tim, and the guy's name was Tim, and like I said, he was holding down the fort for his wife, and so we talked soaps for a while. We talked about some different kinds and different form factors, and the fact that, some come in pucks that are about the same size as, a coffee cup, and some come in tins that are a little bit bigger, and some come in pucks that are a little bit bigger. And the fact that you can put them into bowls and all this stuff. And he was very intrigued and very, he enjoyed the conversation, and I enjoyed talking to him. And he gave me a bar of soap to test. And so he's got some, they've got some absolutely wonderful soaps that, the handcrafted, like body soaps, and it's called thesoapyshop.com. So it's the Soapy, SOAPIE, shop, SHOPPE.com, all one word. So thesoapyshop.com. And so, I told him that I'd take it home and give it a try. And, what could possibly go wrong? You never know. Maybe you'll find a diamond in the rough. Maybe you'll find, the next great soap maker out there who has this knack for creating just this wonderful, marvelous soap. yeah, you never know. And if you don't try, how are you ever going to find out? So anyhow, after he gave me a bar of soap to try out, and so I've been playing around with it, and I owe him a quick email to let him know how all that's going. And anyhow, then I walked across kind of catty corner from the little kiosk and walked into, well, the body shop. And in the body shop, there was a younger man and a girl that were working there. And the younger man's name was Adam. And he came walking up and said, yeah, can I help you? And I said, well, I'm just kind of looking around. And he looked down and he recognized the bar of soap that I had. And he said, that right there is my favorite shaving soap. Whoa, okay. Really? He said, yeah, you bought it from that guy right over there, didn't you? I said, well, yeah, I got it from him. Okay. He said, well, hold on a minute. Let me take care of this customer. I need to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And so we got to talking a little bit, and I told him about the podcast and everything else, And he said, okay, I really need to talk to you because I think I'm doing something wrong. Now, the Body Shop has their own line of, men's shaving products. They've got a wooden-handled nylon brush that is just, ugh. I just, just feeling it. It's just like, especially, with my experience with the Police-On, it's like, okay, I've gone from, synthetic, heaven with the Police-On down to like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? It's like slapping stuff on your face with a chip brush from Lowe's or something. I mean, it was really bad. Anyhow, so we talked a little bit. They've also carries a line of creams, and I've never tested them. I looked at it, but it was a cream that was very much akin to the art of shaving creams. It's that kind of a really, really double thick yogurt consistency kind of thing. The type where with the art of shaving, you just take your brush and kind of dip it in a couple of times, just kind of daub it very gently, and it picks up enough soap to give you more lather than you could possibly hope to use in about 3 or 4 shaves. So anyhow, I got to talking to him, and I said, okay, so what are you using? He said, well, I'm using this brush. And I said, I'm using this can of cream or, this bar of soap. I said, okay, so how are you doing it? Are you bowl lathering or face lathering? He said, well, I'm face lathering. I said, okay. So describe that for me. He said, well, I stick it in and I get some of the stuff on there, and then I just kind of swirl it around. I said, so you're kind of gooping this stuff on like paste. He's like, yeah, and I thought it would lather up and everything, and it's just, well, not. It's like, okay, so of course, my first thoughts are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You need water. It's just, this is, So we sat there for a while, and we talked a little bit, and I described bowl lathering to him. I took one of the brushes, and I demonstrated in my hand how much pressure you put on the brush, kind of splaying it out on my hand to describe that, when you're loading the brush on the bar of soap or, whatever, and kind of describe the loading of the brush and then put it in the bowl. And then, it was funny because the whole time the girl that worked there, she was sort of standing about 2 or 3 feet away, and she wasn't directly staring at me, but she was paying very, very close attention. So it was kind of humorous. It was one of those things where she wasn't engaged in the conversation, but she wasn't letting a word slip by her at all, which I thought was pretty neat. So anyhow, I described bowl lathering, and I said, okay, you're going to laugh at me at this part. I said, you need a bowl like a soup bowl or like a soup mug or even a cereal bowl will work. I mean, you just want a bowl, and, you got your brush. It's a nylon brush, so you don't need to soak it. Just get it wet. I said, but once you load your brush up, I said, swirl it around in the bowl to kind of evenly distribute it. And I said, then you're going to need a measuring spoon. And of course, he looked at me and said, what? I'm not baking a cake here. And I said, it's okay. You don't know yet. I said, you don't have any experience with this. I said, so you need to be able to judge how much water you're putting into this soap. And in order for a soap to work well, it needs water. So go ahead and use the measuring spoon. After a while of using it, you'll get to the point where you'll understand and you'll be able to see, and be able to understand how much water you actually have in your soap, and it'll all be good. He said, I said, you just don't know yet. And he said, okay. So I said, then you put about two teaspoons of water in it, putting a little bit in slowly, kind of work your way up, and take care of it that way. And about between 400 and 600, maybe even 800 revolutions of your brush, it'll start to develop a lather. And I said, that'll help you out. And I then gave him the site for the podcast, and I also sent him to How to Grow a Mustache, because Synergy shaving soap is probably one of the easiest soaps to lather. So that's, okay, so what did I learn from all this? All right, first off, I really enjoy going out and talking to people. I mean, I really do enjoy that. And the problem is I don't know if they're ready for me. I was sitting here as I was walking away from that thinking, it would be fantastic if I could go somewhere like a mall or something like that, and get a bunch of Samog brushes or even Van der Hagen brushes or something, and some salsa bowls and some different soaps and some waters, and teach men how to actually have a decent lather. It's not rocket science, and it just frustrates me, because I have a feeling that there are so many people out there that are looking, desperately seeking for something new and different other than the goo in a can. They've heard about this stuff. They want to try it. They get this stuff. They don't know what they're doing, and they're just dissatisfied, frustrated, and disgusted with the whole thing. And the only thing that they have that is a constant in their lives is the constant drumbeat of this marketing from Gillette, etc., about foam in a can and multi-bladed cartridges, and that's the way to go. And they honestly don't know any different, because they've never had success. Anyhow, like I said, I don't know if I'm ready to go out in public very much. Oh, geez, I probably walked away from there, and the girl probably looked at Adam and said, he was scary. But it was a good time, and I enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll go back here and check on Adam and see how he's doing, and talk to Tim and tell him about his soap. So I tried the soap. I tried the soap that I got at the kiosk at the mall the other day. I tried it, and I tried it, and I tried it some more. And at the end of the day, even though I was willing to forgive the fact that it was a rectangular bar of soap and the form factor was just not right, it was, unfortunately, a bit of a disappointment. I couldn't get it to lather. It was the same thing as the soap that I had previously, the artisan soap that I had previously, where as soon as any amount of water got into it, it just foamed. And is just, big bubbles, no lather, wouldn't hold water for anything. Even doing the best I absolutely could, I'd put it on my face and it just dry and disappear, because it wouldn't hold any moisture, it wouldn't hold any body. And so unfortunately my search for a diamond in the rough has failed yet again. And so that's why I really, really wonder how many artisans are out there that are meaning well, that are trying to do a decent job for the population that is out there wanting this stuff. How many of them are making this stuff and have never used it, don't shave with it, don't understand what a good soap can be, and make this stuff and sell it to the public, and the public sits there and buys it and then turns around waiting for the next advertisement to tell them that it can be as good as the foam in a can. It's just, it's kind of like somebody telling you that the best shaving brush that you can buy is a Van der Hagen boar brush for $9 at Walmart. And the best soap that you can buy is a puck of Williams. And the best razor that you can buy is, I don't know, a Micro Touch or something, you know. There is so much more out there. And you sit there and you go, okay, how do we get the message out? How do we let guys know that this exists? You know, they're obviously buying this stuff, because if they weren't buying it, these little soap makers wouldn't be making a specific shave soap, because there'd be no one asking for it. There would be no market. There would be nothing to incline them to make this stuff. But yet they do, and the only reason that they do is because somebody somewhere has asked for it, and they think or know that there's a market for it, and they need to have one in their stable, and they put one together, and it just falls apart. And the performance just isn't there. And these guys buy this stuff, and they think, yes, I finally reached it. I've finally gotten it. And then it doesn't work well. Or they see pictures on a blog or a Shave of the Day photo of this absolutely beautiful yogurt-like lather, and they sit there scratching their heads going, what the heck am I doing wrong? How come my lathers don't look like that? And I understand why. Because when I tried to do that with this soap, it just wouldn't. There was nothing that I could do to get this soap to create any kind of a decent lather. It was disappointing, to say the least. Now, I still have to try it in the shower, because it may be a very good shower shaving soap. But as far as a lathering soap for shaving with a brush, it's a no-go. But, it does make me wonder how many guys out there are searching for this answer and can't find it. They're trying. They're out there buying these products. You know, why does Body and Brush, for crying out loud, have a shaving brush like they do? Well, first off, they have it because it doesn't cost them hardly anything to put it on their shelves, and they're selling them for, $10, $12 a piece. So, they're picking them up for like $2. But somebody somewhere is buying them. And somebody somewhere is buying these nylon bristle brushes, thinking, well, there you go. That's the epitome. That's good enough. And meanwhile, just down the mall at L'Occitane, there is this absolutely fabulous, just magic carpet ride of luxury called the Plisson Synthetic. And these guys up there at the body shop don't even know it exists. Because they're buying these $10 brushes, and it's like, oh man, just a vast difference. And it all comes from experience, and it all comes from exposure of hanging out on the forums and understanding and listening to guys and watching YouTube videos and kind of checking out, even from the outskirts, looking in to see what all the action is and where everybody's going and what folks are using. That's how you learn. And the problem is that there's probably a lot of people, he didn't even know that there was such a thing as a shaving forum or a podcast. Now, I understand people not knowing that there's a shaving podcast. I mean, there's only 2 in the whole world. I understand that. Same with shave videos and things, Most people, when you tell them that they're out there, they look at you like, there's a video about somebody shaving? Who would want to see that? But there's so much information, and it's almost like it's right there. It's like you're talking to a kid, and it's in the dictionary. And they refuse to open it. It's just, they know it's there, they see it's there, but they don't know how to open it and look up a word. Okay. It's kind of like that. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. If I could honestly figure out how to give the message and just make it happen, I would do that, because there's so much better out there, and it's an awakening. It's a way of life. It's freedom. It's like that. Anyhow, that was my test of the soap. I'm not going to mention the name. Doesn't matter. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody anyhow. So it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But I gave it a fair shot, and we'll keep on trying. We'll keep on looking, because one day, I may actually find a young soap maker that's a diamond in the rough, and then we'll go to work and spread the word around. But until that day, I'll keep looking. It's kind of like, what was his name? Yukon Cornelius, I think, on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He tossed the pickup in the air, pick it up and he'd lick it, sniff it, nothing. Kind of like that. All right, let me tell you about the soaps that I've been playing with this week. I placed an order with Catie's Bubbles, and I actually got 2 containers full of Catie's Bubbles, and I bought 2 of them, and one of them, now you have to understand, okay, I have listened to a lot of my shaving brethren out there go on and on and on about this particular type of Catie Bubbles soap, and that is Le Piment de la Vie, otherwise known as LPV. Why they don't say the French, I don't know. Anyhow, Le Piment de la Vie. And it is Catie's Bubbles shaving soap. It's okay. This is probably blasphemous, but I gotta tell you, there's a lot of people that rant about this stuff. There's a lot of people who, if they're out, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end, they have to go and renew their tub of Catie Bubbles LPV. Okay. And it was based on that recommendation that I got some. Now, it's okay. Now, when I say it's okay, do I mean the performance? No. When it comes to the performance, Catie's Bubbles soaps, the 2 that I have, and they're basically the same base soap with different scents, are fabulous, top shelf. First off, they are absolute lather monsters, okay? No problems lathering no matter what brush I tried, and I tried them all. Just absolute lather monsters. And in fact, they have an extremely wide range of water capabilities as far as how much water you can put in them. I went as far as 1.5 tablespoons to 2.5 tablespoons. Tablespoons. Geez, now I'm going to have somebody throwing something at me. Teaspoons. Teaspoons of water, not tablespoons. Teaspoons. Okay. Now that we've got that straightened out. Okay, so the lather is fantastic. It hydrates exceptionally well. It doesn't take a whole lot of product to make an exceptional lather. Does a great job. The cushioning is fantastic. The glide is fantastic. The face feel is absolutely wonderful. It really is. It is definitely a top shelf soap. No doubt about that. I really thoroughly enjoy it. So when it comes to Catie's Bubbles, it's all about the smell. It's an excellent soap. So the only thing left is the smell. Now, LPV. Okay. It's a nice smell. It's, a pleasant smell. But it's not anything to write home about. It's, I'm not over the top about it. It's not the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm sorry. It's just me. I'm probably going to get hate mail over this, but it's just, it's not me. Good soap. Enjoy it. Not me. Now, on the other hand, the other soap that I have, which is a Jardin d'Or, which is the Garden of Gold. This stuff is marvelous. I like this stuff. So just to give a description, first off, the soaps are, they're a relatively soft soap. They come in a nice blue jar, and you get 8 ounces of it. So you got a half a pound of soap in this jar. So just to give a description of the LPV, the way it's described is sweet and spicy and earthy. Okay, so there's kind of a background a spice scent to it, but it's almost like a pepper almost. And there's a little, maybe a moss scent back in the background. And altogether, it's got a little bit of a sweetness to it, but for me it's much more black peppery, with some sweetness to it. And then some kind of earth tones, kind of like a moss or an earth tone or something like that. And it's a, it's a nice soap. But again, the scent is just, not great for me. I'm sorry. It's just not. I was going to say deliver all hate mail to Chris at TSC. But I thought maybe I shouldn't do that. Anyhow, the ingredients on these soaps are, for these French-style soaps, are stearic acid, water, coconut oil, potassium hydroxide, sodium lactate, glycerin, and fragrance. Now, the Jardin d'Or, right off the website, a delightful blend of sweet honeysuckle blossom, nectar, oak moss, and patchouli. The honeysuckle and patchouli are, for me, what is most present in this stuff. Now, one of the reasons that I really latch onto that, like I've always said, people have the sense of smell, the smell memory, if you will, that is probably one of the greatest memories that you have. Ever since I've grown up, almost everywhere that I have lived, there has always been honeysuckle. And honeysuckle to me is just an absolutely beautiful fragrance. It's lovely. And in fact, when I was a kid, we used to take the honeysuckle blossoms and pull the stems out the backside and get the nectar. And we'd do that for, an hour. So for me, the Jardin d'Or, or in French, Jardin d'Or, is just a fantastic trip down memory lane every time I use it. And that's one of the reasons that I like it. That's one of the reasons that I appreciate it. Now, of course, that does make me wonder what the people that are really like LPV, what they're associating the scent with. It's okay. It's just, I don't know. I'll piff it or something. Give it away, trade it for another thing of Catie's Bubbles. I don't know. I'll do something with it. It's a great soap. It's just not for me, I guess. Anyhow, both the soaps, like I said, they're 8 ounces, so you get a half a pound of soap. They come in blue jars with screw top lids on them. So both of these soaps that I have, both the LPV and the Jardin d'Or, both of them are French-style soaps. And again, both soft soaps. The containers, little blue containers, and I say little, they hold 8 ounces of soap. You get a half a pound of soap, so it's a good deal. Now the French style soaps are $20. Now they also have the Italian style soaps that they're $15. A firmer soap with all natural fragrances and butters for a quality shave. That's the Italian shaving soap. He's got 2 right up there right now, so those are available. Now, in the French-style shaving soaps, which is what I have, right off his website, are you tired of spreading a can of chemically laden goo on your face? I love that. I absolutely love that. What a way to start the conversation. We handcrafted our shaving products using the highest quality ingredients that are carefully selected to provide superior performance. All of our shaving soaps are completely vegetable and fruit-based. And he's got, what are there? There's 13 of those. And so there's a couple here that I wouldn't mind trying. There's a Bailey's Irish Coffee, an orange, a grape, a rose that I'm interested in, gardenia that I am also interested in, one with no scents at all, a Mazepan, an ocean groove that I would assume would be oceany. So there's a couple in there that I'm really rather intrigued, and I wouldn't mind having a few more of these soaps just to play around with the scent. And in fact, if anything, the one thing that I would recommend to the proprietor of Catie's Bubbles is you might want to try offering samples, because quite honestly, $20 is a pretty hefty price for a soap. Okay, now, I don't mind paying the $20 to get some soap. Don't mind it at all. But I'm thinking especially of new guys. New guys who don't necessarily understand the fragrance that you're trying to describe might be hesitant to try and spend $20 for a soap like, for me, LPV, which is just, And if there were samples available, it might be something interesting in that, charge, charge $2 a sample or whatever, but if it's feasible, offer samples, because I think personally, the soaps are absolutely fabulous, and the more people that try them, the more people are going to absolutely adore them. But you just need to get the stuff in the people's hands. And I think, the scent that I have, and from what I've read, on forums and things like that, people just absolutely go nuts over the scents. The ability of this soap to carry the fragrance that it describes is very, very well known, and it does a good job. So now the question is, can you get the scents in people's hands in a form that, people will allow or appreciate, pay for, so that they can then make better choices as to what it is they'd actually purchase without feeling like they're, gambling. Anyhow, just a suggestion. But for me, Catie's Bubbles as a shaving soap is fabulous. From a scent standpoint, again, for me, the Jardin d'Or est magnifique. It really is. It's wonderful. The LPV, Le Piment de la Vie, is just kind of okay, so. It's all right. But again, that's just me. So, I was going to say send all the hate mail to Christopher over there at TSE, but I figured that'd be a little rough. Yeah, you can go ahead and send it to me. So the razor that I have been predominantly using this week is a Schick Injector. It is a Type J. It is a 1958 to 1964 Schick Injector, and that's right around my birth year. It says on it Schick Safety Razor, and there is the Schick crown that is on the head of the razor. And it is a little, Schick Injector razor. Now, the Type J, it's a J1. It's got a long ivory-colored handle and a gold head. It's got the long round handle, and there's ribbing on the handle with a seam down the sides of it. So, you would think that it would have a good grip. It's got a bar guard with parallel grooves, and it's just a classic injector head that kind of was the later models, if you will, of injector heads. Okay, so what did I think of this razor? I'm afraid that at this point I will not be purchasing any more, well, should I say any more? I will not be purchasing Schick injectors that are later than this Type J, because I have not been impressed with the Type J at all. Now, if somebody would like to tell me that, one of the other types is better, please do so, because right now what I'm afraid has happened is I have reached the pinnacle of Schick injector technology with the Type G that I have, or maybe the Hydro Magic that I have, and everything after that is doing nothing but going downhill. That's my fear, because this razor, well, it came just shy of sucking. It really did. Now, let me explain what that means. First off, the head on this razor, the handle is loose on this razor. It wobbles just a bit, okay? So there's that little annoyance. It's almost like, they put it in and it's not quite tight, and it's just, it's just poor quality. It's just, okay, you can hear it. Okay, that's the head rattling on the handle. Hopefully you can hear that. So, the head doesn't move really side to side, it's mainly just an up and down movement, but it moves. Okay. Now, the handle, as long as it's dry, provides a very nice grip. But what you find, or at least what I find, is that I tend to grip it along the ribs, and it's got a fairly long neck on this thing going up to the head. And so, it's not, the way the handle's shaped, there's really not anywhere to grab up on the neck of this thing, Some of the double-edged razors, the single-edged razors, even some of the injectors, you can grab closer to the head to give you a little bit better grip and this one you just can't. Now, okay. In the shower, this handle, because the grooves are very, very, small. They're not very deep. They're not very, they're defined and everything, but they're just shallow grooves, It's a shallow ribbing. It's not a deep ribbing, if you will. In the shower, when you have soap on your hands, this darn thing becomes slippery. And that alone, I was shaving in the shower today, and it was almost to the point where I was ready to chuck this thing over the top and say, I'm done. Give me, an old 1930s Gillette new, do something. This is ridiculous. But the thing was slippery, and that made for an experience that was not pleasant at all. Now, in addition to that, even though I have put new blades in this thing, on a single-edged razor, and even a double-edged razor, but more so on a single-edged razor because you can really, really hear it, okay? When you lather up and do the first pass, you get a nice audible feedback of the blade cutting stubble. On the second pass, you can hear it cutting stubble as well, but it is not as loud. And on the third pass, if you hear anything, it's very little at all. You can actually hear the stubble being reduced on your skin. Now, this little thing, this Type J Schick injector razor, there's a couple of places where I can go over and over and over and over. There was one spot on my cheek, of all places, which is usually not a difficult place to shave, on my cheek, where I went over at least a dozen times in every direction that I could think of, and there was still stubble. Think about that for a minute. I've never done that with a double-edged or even one of the old single-edged. Like 3 times and it's gone. This thing again and again and again, it wouldn't cut. And so I got to looking, okay, is this a mild razor? Is this a lady's razor? Did they sell it to women because they knew the darn thing didn't cut worth a dang? And in fact, if you look at the Type K, which is right after, it's basically the same handle, when it first started, and then it just, was embedded with gold glitter or something like that. And it's like the same razor. And it's like, okay, well, this was a miserable razor for me, so yeah, let's sell it to the women because, they won't know any difference. Again, marketing ploys. It's always marketing ploys. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, they had this. This is probably getting close to the end of the patent to the point where, they're not going to be able to change a whole lot. There's a reluctance to go backwards because even though it worked, well, it's going backwards. And nobody wants to admit that. So, we can't do that. We can't put out a new type of G razor because, they worked. And, we got to have something new and different. Well, it doesn't work. Yeah, that's it. Needless to say, I'm not real happy with this razor. And I wouldn't give it to anybody. This one, I'm sorry. I may keep around in my collection to show people what a miserable razor looks like. But quite honestly, I wouldn't even give this thing away. But again, that's just me. And that's probably one of the reasons that, well, I was going to say it's probably one of the reasons people don't use injectors very much anymore. But, there's some that are actually pretty good. But this one, nah, it's not. It's, I bought it, I tried it, didn't like it, there you go. That's one of the things that we do here. Okay, so I've just had it. It's one of those things where something happened to me a while ago, a couple days ago, that was so maddening and so frustrating that I actually had to wait a couple days before I recorded this and in fact, it was a couple days before I even talked to anybody about it because I was just afraid I was just going to go off on somebody. Okay. So, one of the things that I enjoy about South Carolina is men in South Carolina are raised to be polite. In fact, all people in South Carolina are raised to be polite. It's an expectation. It's something that we do. And it's one of the reasons that I enjoy living here. And in fact, the other day I was at the mall and I was standing there waiting to go out, and there was a family coming in, and there was a young man about 6 or 7 years old, and he went to grab the door, and he opened the door for his, I believe, his mother and grandmother. And as soon as the door was opened, he walked in to get out of the way, and even they stopped and said, "Hey, next time, hold this door, bud." And then as they walked past me, they looked at, the mother looked at me and she said, "Well, it's a good start." And I responded. I said, "Yep, it's a good start." And the thing is the underlying expectation is that men in South Carolina, from a young age on, are raised to be polite and helpful. Okay, so here I am driving to work, and something just set me off, okay? And it brought it all back to me. So the other day, I was walking out of a store, and it happened to be a store, a sporting goods store, if you will, that happened to have firearms in it, okay? Lots of men in the store. Although now I'm second-guessing that statement. So I'm walking out of the store. And I walk over and I get in my truck and I look out the front window of my truck and there are two ladies like walking around an SUV, and in fact there's one of them that's crawling under the backside of this little SUV. It was a little Hyundai. And what really set me off is that the guy that left the store right in front of me was parked right next to them. And he got in his truck, and as soon as I looked at this car that these two women were having issues with, I noticed immediately that the front tire was flat. We're not talking low. We're talking down all the way on the rim, flat. The front end of the car kind of hiked over to the side and everything. I mean, it was flat. And the younger woman was literally underneath this Hyundai SUV, trying desperately to get the spare tire out from under this truck. And this guy walked past, got in his vehicle, parked right next to it, and in fact on the same side as the flat tire, got in his truck, and just drove off. Not so much as a how do you do, not so much as a, hey, do you need a hand? Is there anything I can do to help? Here, let me get out of your way. Nothing, just got in the truck and drove off. Well, as soon as I saw it, I'm sorry, but, I live in South Carolina, and, this is what we're supposed to do with things like this. I got out of my truck, I walked over, and I said, do you ladies need some help? And you could tell it in their voice. They were desperate. And yes, they needed help. They'd been working for 20 minutes trying to get this tire out from underneath the backside of the SUV, and they couldn't do it. So I reached under there. I got the spare tire out from under the truck. I rolled it over. I got the jack out from under the truck, jacked up the car to replace the tire for them. And they're standing there just aghast. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, aghast? This is South Carolina, for crying out loud. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help people. The last thing somebody needs when they're dealing with a flat tire is have to deal with a flat tire. Wouldn't it be so much nicer if they could, assist a little bit and not stress so much, because somebody who knows and understands can help them out and take a moment. They are human beings after all. So I replaced the tire. I jacked the car up. It's a long story, but essentially I jacked the car up. And the funny thing was they'd forgotten, in the stress of the moment, they had forgotten to put the parking brake on. So as soon as the car came up off of the flat tire, it inched forward a little bit and took the jack and basically bent it. Now, this was the standard jack that came with the little SUV. Wasn't much of a jack, but it bent it. So now the jack is inoperable. Okay. Most people, all right, I'm done. I'm finished. Okay, so I went to my truck. I got the truck jack out of my truck, jacked up the car, replaced the tire, put it back down. Took me all of about 15 minutes. I'm sorry, but another human being is worth 15 minutes of my time if they are in despair. Now, so we put everything back together and tried to get them on their way. They had another issue. The car wouldn't start, and it wasn't the battery. It was something else. So I don't know what it was, but they said, you got the big part done. We're good from here. We've called somebody. They're on their way. Okay. But at least they didn't have to stress about the tire. Now, so here I am driving along to work, minding my own business, and there's someone that is, I'm on a 4-lane road, and there's somebody that's coming out of a shop, and they're trying to turn left, and so there's a stoplight. Okay, so I stop and give them plenty of room. I'm on the outside lane, so I stop and give them plenty of room so that they can go in front of me to turn left and get where they're going. Okay? And this lady in the other lane that is following behind me somewhat doesn't slow down, doesn't do anything, just pulls right into the spot and, talking on the cell phone, absolutely oblivious. And so then it hit me. First off, it just ticked me off because, again, it's something where, you're so concentrated on yourself that you don't even look around and see if somebody else needs a hand, a favor. It's not going to cost you anything to stop and let somebody else go ahead of you. Because there's a there's a stoplight right there. You're not going to go anywhere anyhow. It's not like it's going to save you an extra second or two. Anyhow, that just absolutely set me off. And I'm like, are you people crazy? And so I came to the conclusion. It's either people are just fundamentally rude, which in some cases they are. Or, and this is the one because I like to give people at least a little bit of the benefit of doubt, the other thing that could explain it is that people are absolutely oblivious to what is going on around them. Once they get in the car, they shut the doors, the windows are up, the air conditioning's on, there's text coming over the cell phone, they're listening to the radio. They have tunnel vision driving down the road, and they literally don't look anywhere. They don't see anything. They might look around, but they don't see anything. They don't, slow down and look at the thrown tire tread off the side of the road to see if it's really a tire tread or if it's something else that, you may need to stop and help somebody. They don't even stop. They just, and then if you ask them, hey, did you see that? See what? No, I didn't notice anything. It's like I can almost imagine that if I walked up to the guy that drove away in the pickup truck at the store, if I said, what the heck are you doing? Did you not even notice? And he'd probably look at me like, what? What are you talking about? I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Of course I would stop for somebody. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, have we gotten to a point where we are so connected, if you will, to everything, whether it be a phone or radio or, whatever, texts, social media? Have we gotten to a point where we are absolutely fundamentally oblivious to what is really going on? And then you start to wonder, okay, if you're not able, whether or not you're willing is another matter, but if you're not able to see what is going on, is it no wonder that we succumb to the ever-present media telling us what is going on? Is it any wonder that if we're absolutely oblivious to everything and are unwilling to step outside of that little cocoon that we have created for ourselves, that somebody can come along and tell us that the goo in a can is just as good as anything else, or that this 4-bladed cartridge shaves just as well as a straight razor? Because we are so oblivious, we have no frame of reference for anything, so we accept it. And we go on, and we think, what? It's normal, right? What? I'm doing something different? What? It's, like I said, it drove me crazy. And the only explanation that I can come up with is that people are either fundamentally rude or they are oblivious. And the thing is that I can't give them the rude check mark because the majority of people that I talk to are not rude. But then I watch them and I observe them, whether it's in a mall or in a store or whatever, and they are absolutely, truly oblivious. I've been watching for about a week now just because this is something that sparked my interest. And they are. They're absolutely oblivious. There's some stuff that I do at work where I have to carry stuff around, and it's a handful. And, does anybody offer to help? No. But when I ask somebody to help, oh, yeah, sure. And I honestly think it's not because they're rude, it's just because they're just flat oblivious. They don't even conceptualize that somebody else could potentially need, a hand. It's frightening. It is absolutely frightening. Anyhow, my question for you, dear listener, have you gotten to a point in your life where you are becoming, I'm not going to tell you that you are, but have you gotten to a point in your life where you are becoming, from time to time, oblivious to what is going on around you? Now, a classic case. Everybody knows what's going on in the national news. Everybody does. I mean, it's all over the news. You hear it on the radio. It's everywhere. Do you know what's happening in your state? Do you know what's happening in your city? Do you know what's happening in your neighborhood? Think about that for a minute. If you do not know what's happening in your neighborhood, I'm sorry, but the oblivious check mark is getting close to being checked. Is there a new house going up? Is somebody having problems with a lawnmower? Did somebody just put in a sprinkler system? Just the little things. Do you know what's going on in your neighborhood? Do you know that somebody got a new car? Now, in my neighborhood, either we're all a bunch of busybodies or we all like to stand around and converse with each other, but we have a pretty good understanding of what's going on in our neighborhood. We also have a pretty good understanding of what's going on in our community. Granted, we don't like half of it, but we have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. The state, it starts to get a little fuzzy. I will admit that. And when you get to the national, yeah, it's all over the news, and most of it's hype. I mean, it's incredible. But the thing is that if people are wandering around essentially oblivious to the fact that somebody's, laying down dying next to them, which has happened, by the way, in New York, okay, people just walking by somebody that's having a heart attack right there on the street, okay, if they're absolutely oblivious to this, is it any wonder that they will absorb and suck up and accept just about anything anybody with any, type of authority, like journalists, would tell them? It makes sense. And then, you take that one step further and you think, well, if they're willing to accept anything a journalist says, they're probably very, very susceptible to anything that media in general says, like, well, advertising. Yes, this can of goo will do just as good a job as this, this old-fashioned, miserable soap, that has been around for years, and we have something better. Well, is it really better, or are they just selling you hype? And because you're not paying much attention, you bought it. Anyhow, that's the rant for the day. If you see somebody in trouble, if you see somebody that needs a helping hand, offer them a helping hand. At the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, they don't need much. I'm not saying put yourself in danger or anything like that, but if somebody needs help carrying something, offer. If somebody needs help learning how to make a lather, offer. Talk to people. Get to know them. We're all human beings. We thrive. We thrive on community, on relationships, on connectivity. That's one of the reasons that the internet and Facebook and Twitter, that's one of the reasons that they sell so big. We are not solitary things. We are community things. We like to be in communities, which means, well, we really need to talk to each other. Anyhow, that's the rant for the day. Well, that concludes this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you have some suggestions or would like a topic covered, drop me an email at BrushnSoapnBlade@gmail.com or give me a call at 864-372-6234 or contact us on Twitter at BrushnBlade. You can also visit us at our blog, BrushnSoapnBlade.wordpress.com. As always, we're available on iTunes and Stitcher. Okay, let's get to some letters. The first letter that I've got comes from Bruce. Hello, sir. After listening to one of your previous episodes, I have decided to put my soap acquisition disodor. I like that.